Thanks for coming out today. My name is Nar. I have numerous titles or nicknames. Pastor Nar. I have been a pastor for many decades. And more recently, Shaman Nar, as a lot of you already know. I've kind of brought together this beautiful group of people with varying spiritual traditions and practices. And my heart for not just Goose, but for our planet, for our world, is to learn to integrate, to not just hop from experience to experience, but to learn to build this new information and these new experiences into our lives and actually have a transformed life. Goose is a wonderful place for that. So I would just like everybody to introduce themselves, let us know about what you do, who you are, your spiritual traditions, and your healing work.
Oh, do I get to? Okay, all right, we can start down here. Hi, I'm Dirk Vanderdyne. Really glad you all are here. This is wonderful. I'm a Christian pastor in a mainline denomination, and I'm also a Reiki master. So that's kind of a neat combination. That integration is kind of a challenge sometimes, but I'm super grateful that I get to be part of these different communities, and really grateful for all that Reiki has opened me up to and connected me with. And Reiki's got its origins in Buddhism, which I'm very grateful for the connections there. So it's an energy healing modality, and I think there is a connection. We'll get more into that later.
Good morning to you. My name is Bushi, and my particular, life has been an integration of Zen Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, and Southern Baptist roots. I always like to shoot for the extremes. So yes, I was a Southern Baptist preacher for 25 years, and while entering into ministry as a Southern Baptist, I began a very serious inquiry into Buddhism as well as other Eastern religions. Buddhism really spoke to me as I had been, like most of us, dealing with early childhood post-traumatic stresses and those sorts of things, personality issues, anxiety, all of those sorts of things. And Buddhism was the one tradition that seems to chiefly go directly at the mind, the thoughts, ideas, how you process those sorts of things. And as you can imagine, being a preacher in the South, the kinds of stresses and all sorts of ambivalences that you can experience with church folk, Buddhism helped me to kind of balance that out. And as a result, after 10 years of being on retreat and being a Buddhist monk, I found this very unique way. I reached a place of awakening. I'm very careful to say enlightenment, but awakening, to whereas both Buddha and Jesus are seen in the same scope. And so when we speak of one, we're speaking of both. And my life has been a combination of the two. So there you are. Thank you.
My turn. Hello, beautiful people. I'm Jasmin, and I'm a writer and a storyteller. And I grew up kind of a denominational mutt, I guess you'd say. I grew up Vineyard, and then my family switched to Presbyterian church. Then we did house church for a little while, and then I took a break altogether. Now I find myself worshiping with an Alliance of Baptist congregation. But I think what I want to talk to you all about today is just as a receiver of these different inner spiritual healing modalities. That's really led me to think about maybe what kind of work I can do, and I'm still sort of muddling through that. So
Good morning, peace and blessings. My name is Zenaida, and I am a little bit of everything. I grew up also a spiritual mutt. My parents hopped from church to denomination after denomination, found themselves in Pentecostal world, and that was lovely for them. I lost all of that in a 6.5-year horrendous relationship that changed me forever in the best of ways, and found my spirituality on the healing path coming out of it. So now I help others after studying with shamans and natives, and also varying forms, Reiki as well, like your friend down there. Now I've made it my mission to help bring all of us together, because it does not matter, in my opinion, where you're at. We're all going to the same place.
Now, if we could create an experience for us here, my brother here is going to lead us in an Ohm chant. If you would like to participate, raise the energy that's here, vibrate with it, and realize it's all one. It's a unifying source and force that we can participate in.
So the idea of chanting Om is to emulate, to become, pretty much, the sound of the universe. You see, Om is the universal sound that is registered. You can actually feel it, you can hear it. It's there. And it is said that when we manufacture this with our own vocal cords, with our own breath, that we are more in tune with the reality of clarity than we are more so when we walk around, you see. So chanting Om is, and we'll do this 3 times. As I teach this to my students, when you chant to the full exiting of your breath, the full exiting. And then you inhale, and then you naturally chant Om again. So it will sound as if, and all of us will start at one time, and I'll just demonstrate. And then again. And we'll do that 3 times. Everybody understand that? All right, very good. So let us take about 3 deep breaths, forgetting everything around you, just being with it, having no particulars about it that you're interested in. And prepare your breath and chant with me. Inhale. One final time. You are now one with the universe.
What you're feeling and sensing and experiencing right now is oneness. Some may look at this group of people and say they're very different. one's a Christian, maybe a couple are a Christian. They find these differences. That's illusion. And we're learning how to experience. I was going to say utilize. I don't want to utilize anything. But how to experience a oneness and a utilization of our healing gifts for the sake of the world. And so I would like whoever, there's no real order here, but can each of you share a little bit of how you've integrated what some people think is, I don't even know the right word anymore. How you've integrated your specific expression of spirituality, and that might help others, if that makes any sense.
I went first before.
Okay, I'll go. How have I integrated my specific style of spirituality? My style of spirituality is no style, and it is also in your face. I've learned the best way that works for me and for my students, people that I teach and help to become other healers, that just put it out there. The first time I did it, I put it on my body. I put it on my arm. A forest bird never wants a cage. Shy, written on the inside. Mom, Dad didn't like tattoos. But since then, in over a decade, I have grown to doing things like making people glare at me because they're not sure what's on my hat. But I firmly believe, and so try to live, if it's in something that's printed on my body, if it's something I'm wearing, if it's some music that I'm playing, I do try to keep that not offensive publicly. But something to reach out and grab people's attention. I know that someone that looks like me is going to come up and talk to me, and we will speak about spirituality. We will have many things in common, and we will go and we will grow. But what did we truly learn in the end of it? Many times. Whereas if I reach out and grab the attention of someone who would never approach me, then we grow, because I learn where they're coming from. I can share my spirituality. They learn where I'm coming from. We form an acceptance, a love, and once we help that love grow and manifest, we're integrating this into our everyday life and into the other aspects of our culture that we otherwise may not give the time of day. That's it. Somebody else. Now you do. I did the thing.
We
I wore
go
the
back
hat.
down the line. I can go next. Well, I was thinking about healing as I was walking up here, and just the different ways that I've approached it. And when I was a kid, I think that there was a very prescribed way that I was sort of allowed to be healed, which was either the pastor like praying over me, or an elder in the church or something like that. And so I haven't told this story publicly before, but I feel as though I should. So I think the first moment where I kind of was brave enough to try something out of the ordinary for me. A friend of mine and I went to see a crystal energy healer, and I was sort of like, oh God, like, what have I done? But we did this loving kindness meditation before she went and laid me back on a bed and placed these crystals, I guess on different chakras. I don't even really know exactly what it was that she was doing. And I was laying there and I was sort of sleepy, so I was very comfortable. And all of a sudden, I thought that I heard somebody. I thought I heard her coming into the room. And so I opened my eyes and kind of looked at the door, and there was nobody there. And I was like, all right. But I still felt, I guess I'd say, the presence of God in a way that I hadn't really experienced it before, because it was very feminine. Like it felt almost sensual, actually. And I just felt like wrapped in this love in a different way than I had. And I'd say that experience led me into just learning a lot more about the feminine divine, and I was led to Barbara Holmes. She's a contemplative African-American scholar, and I read a book called Joy Unspeakable about contemplative practices in the Black church. And in that book, she talks about, I think in Gullah culture, daughters having the gift of second sight. And I wondered, like, oh, is this for me? It was the first time that I'd ever really seen it in an African-American context. So having that narrative there just really has helped me explore directions that I didn't really think I'd go in. And so now I'm thinking about spiritual direction. I'm not sure. I just know that I'd like to be able to hold space for people, and hospitality is super, that kind of hospitality is super important to me, and I think necessary for healing and cultivating a rich soil for your soul to heal.
All right. So, I don't know, I was enjoying listening to everybody else. I would love to continue more hearing more of that. So for me, I grew up something, I knew something was wrong, right? I did. I was a preacher's kid, and everybody was holy all around me. But that feeling that this isn't for me, I knew that there was something wrong, and this is all before the age of 12. I knew that I didn't fit in, and I knew that I had to get out of there. And I knew that because somewhere within 12 years of my lifespan, my mind began to be just absolutely uncontrollable. The events going on around me, life happening all around me, and just naturally, spiritually, deeply knowing and feeling this is not my path. And so like most of you, I grew up and went out into the world and took the conditioning of my past as the path for my future. Became a preacher and an educator, an academic, and I still felt as if this path that I'm on is not completely mine. There are facets of it, Christ in particular, that are really fascinating to me, that are so diametrically opposed to the structure of the institutional church in which I'm a part of. And so I began to really more so investigate myself. My search into Buddhism was largely due to my own mental ambivalence, the kind of mental stuff I was dealing with, having to juggle, Christ's theology as the general church expected it to be played out, and what I thought Christ could be through my own personal experience, and how I would transform that if given the opportunity to do so. So Buddhism largely became a place for me to heal emotionally. The Buddhist concept of detachment, of emptiness, was something very profound to me, that you can have all of these life experiences, but within a single thought, they can, dissipate. They can be eroded because, the fact that we don't understand their substance. We hold them to be true. We mentally within ourselves hold these truths to be self-evident, and we live that out in a very, very real way, and we are the receivers, of our own, attachment. So Buddhism became a way for me, because it worked more so with my own humanity, of understanding not just the Son of God. We love to put Christ in the context of the Son of God, but it began to offer me the opportunity to look at Christ as the Son of Man, his human side. We take into context that Jesus is supposed to have come in this form knowing and fully understanding everything that we're going through. This is supposed to be the bedrock of why he's so compassionate and loving. Yet we don't understand ourselves because we look at Christ through the lens of the Son of God. And so I think, and I began largely through Buddhism to understand that Jesus, even through all of his teachings and everything that everybody was trying to write about him, really points to the source of heaven and hell, which is the human mind. This is the source of heaven and hell, you see. What does hell look like when one fully, does not understand the Son of Man? It is praying with people in church, and then as they're praying, or right after they finish praying, you execute them, all 9 of them. You remember Charleston, South Carolina. That's hell. That is what hell looks like, Now, if it gets worse outside of this planet, other than what we're already doing to each other, then, well, we're yet to find that. But we really needed, at least myself, to understand what am I, who am I, in the process of propagating God or Jesus. And Buddhism helped me to find the worth of Jesus, the essence of really what he was getting at, and really honor the Christian faith even more, you see. So.
Let's see. So, all right. I'm feeling kind of nervous. I'm going to lean into that. Because let's see. So for me, where my Reiki story, I guess, starts, let's see, I was not a Christian until I was 13 years old. And when I became a Christian, it was in a very conservative mainline denomination where we were taught very clearly that we were definitely going to heaven, but, the other Christians, it's a solid maybe. And anybody, yeah, right? and anybody who's not a Christian, they're definitely going somewhere bad for a long, long time. And so, I was taught about, Buddhists being evil and all that stuff. You didn't know you were evil, did you? No. They told me. They told you, exactly. You've been there, done that. During college, I kind of got to a point where I was like, if Christianity is all about fear and judgment and all that stuff, I'm just done with that. Went through a bunch of other faith changes where I kind of came back to it. Went to seminary to become a Lutheran pastor, and but still had a lot of those, even though it was a more open space, a more open community, I still had a lot of those tapes playing in the back of my head. I'm seeing a lot of nods here. And a lot of those Christianity good, everything else bad. And it was the craziest thing. After seminary and before going into the call process and all that, my wife got pretty sick with a nasty chronic illness. Had a little conversation with the Spirit one day. God, why don't you heal her? And what I got back was, well, why don't you heal her? Whoa. And shortly thereafter, I heard about, some energy healing stuff and heard about Reiki. And I, kind of felt this pull to do this. And then, the pull got stronger and stronger. You know how it is when you get a Holy Spirit push, And there was this one training that I was going to go to, and I skipped it because, again, all those old tapes playing, this is the devil's work, you shouldn't do this, and all that. And that whole weekend that thing was happening, I felt like I had violated part of my soul. So when another training came up that seemed like a good one for Reiki 1 and 2, I said yes, and I went to it. And that ended up just opening up so many other spiritual viewpoints, gave me so much more openness toward energy healing, and also, Reiki is based in Buddhism. So I went to the local Chicago Buddhist temple and hung out with them for a while and learned a bit of Zen meditation and Shin Buddhism, because, respect and listening is a good thing. And, Reiki ended up being something that kind of helped open up a lot of things in me that had kind of gotten stuck or closed off in seminary. And my first call. Well, yeah, y'all know how church is not always a kind, friendly place. My first call kind of tore me apart. It's bad. And sometimes when the church does bad things to you, it's really hard to find any kind of comfort or peace, or be able to engage in much of like church or even Christianity. And what I found was that basically God had like installed this back door to my soul with Reiki, so that even when I couldn't connect to the Spirit through church and through my Christian faith, that was a spiritual practice that helped connect me with the Spirit and got me through. So I probably would not still be a Christian or a pastor without Reiki, which is probably a weird thing to hear from somebody, but that's my truth. That's my experience. And the last few years, well, I got to meet Shaman Nar. Sorry, like I'm sorry, Nar. That was.
And we're neighbors.
And we're neighbors. Yeah, I came all the way to North Carolina to Wild Goose 3 years ago to find out that we live 20 minutes from each other. I know, right? And being able, like Reiki gave me this openness to learning from different traditions, different practices, and those have been so good for my soul. I call it my extracurricular spirituality, right? And something that I've been hearing more and more, especially when we started Healing Arts Tent last year, which is an intentionally interspiritual space. There are so many people who come there who are Christian plus, or who are interspiritual, who feel at home in so many different traditions and have deep, authentic experiences of the Spirit by engaging in different traditions. And a lot of us are really kind of scared to. I don't want to minimize in any way the language of coming out, but I hear that language used by a lot of people, but wouldn't it be a great thing if maybe by being in a space where it's safe to be interspiritual, that could give us the freedom and the courage to create those spaces in other places in our lives. That's something that I want to do.
My favorite moderator. How long do we have? 20 minutes still. Wow. Okay.
Yay.
It feels like it's been an hour already, and I'm my own story. A lot of people ask me, how can you be a shaman and be a Christian and a Christian pastor? And aren't they mutually exclusive? Isn't one good and one bad, and one holy and one demonic? It's like, no. But people often ask, like, how did you become? And I really don't have an answer. I came to faith, I think, back in, I think it was 1974. And that started a journey that has led me through fundamentalist Baptist, holiness Pentecostal, Vineyard, Calvary Chapel, charismatic, non-denominational, no church at all, house church, all these different expressions. And the only answer I can give people is I follow where my heart is leading me and where I sense a good presence of Spirit. That's the only thing.
I agree, and I'm pretty much the same way.
Yeah. I love that Bible verse, there is no fear in love because perfect love casts out all fear. Yeah, that's right. And so that's within any tradition, that's what I'm looking for, is because within any tradition, there will be communities and individuals who are more pointed toward love and more toward fear. So I'm looking for the love people in any community that I'm a part of.
Oh no, what were you going to say?
One of the unique things that happened for me in being so, I guess, desirous of exploring my humanity, once I began to understand that, there's a human part of serving Christ that we often neglect. And Buddhism, through exploration, helped me to find my humanity, which helped me also psychologically to understand what I was doing for Christ, as well as what I was not doing for Christ. I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out, that exploring that other facet of myself that was there, that the church largely dispelled. The church largely said that's evil. I was largely one of those kids that you tell me not to do it, I'm going to do it, you see. And I think that was beneficial for me, as well as Pastor Noah and everybody on this panel, and many others I've encountered in life. There's a particular aspect of your humanity that should you shirk your responsibility of knowing you, it could be hindering your direct propagation of Christianity or whatever religion that if you really understood that, destroying yourself had an impact on other people, then it's a good possibility you wouldn't destroy yourself, But Buddhism helped me to know more about me and what God was working with, you see. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like in the Bible, Paul gives us a lot of shoulds.
Yeah.
But like for me, it seems like Buddhism kind of fills in a lot of, this is how you actually live this out. This is how you get your mind to the point where you can live a life of love.
Sure. And Christ was quite the same way. The law said to hate people who were doing these sorts of things, to stone them, to do all. But Christ said, I know, but I say, I say have that salami, hoagie, or whatever it is you want. Go for it.
And as we're talking about our humanity, I think that it's so important to acknowledge our bodies in all of this.
Yes.
And I was wondering, Nar, when you mentioned following your heart and just sort of feeling a sense of where you wanted to be, if you could just talk a little bit about how that feels like physically in your body.
I'm an Enneagram 2, so I'm in the heart-centered. This has always been the case, not always healthily. But I don't know of any time where I have not been drawn to things by my heart. Not saying that my brain and my mind does not try to interrupt that, but for me, this doesn't have to be for anybody else. It is a peaceful, calm, inquisitive at times drawing. Like, I want to experience that. I feel like going to the forest today. I'm going to the forest. And you know me well enough. For me, it's a calmness. It's not a fear. When I'm drawn to people, I will I'll move past whatever feelings of being uncomfortable and at least make that attempt, like us a number of years ago.
Absolutely. We have a unique, and I just told Pastor Nar, for the first time, I have always wanted to work with him in some respect at the Goose because of our energy. And I guess I'm the same way as well. I feel people, I feel all of you. And even though, there may be some discrepancy in maybe what's going on in one's head, I move past that as well because I can't help it. It's just the way I am, and so I work with that. That's how the spirit moves.
Now, one thing that your question prompted or brought up, a lot of us were raised that the heart is deceitful and wicked above all things.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I say bullshit.
Amen.
Your heart is good.
Yes.
Your heart reflects the Creator. Your heart is wonderful. Sometimes it takes a long time to get to know our heart. But so sometimes we just have to remove a little bit of information or belief and dispose of it properly. Okay? And then bring in something else in its place and start to nourish that and work with that. Get to know who you are with that, But the bodily, it's a calmness for me. If I start to get really, and some of you here know me well, and you know when my energy is. Nard, you have to go to the forest. So sometimes, the mental will get in the way of the body. But yeah, for me, it's a calmness and an inquisitiveness. I want to know. I want to experience. Years ago, I'll tell you a story not many know, but years ago, I had a buddy who lived in Columbus, Ohio. I went to Columbus for an event. And I called him in the daytime, and I said, I need to go do something in the day. He goes, oh, do you want to go to a park or to a water fountain or whatever? I know your water is your thing. I'm like, no, I want to go to a pagan bookstore. And he's like, okay. And so he's looking, this is before IMAPs and all that stuff. And so he's looking on his computer for me. He goes, well, I found one in Gehenna. I'm like, oh, that's a perfect place for a pagan bookstore. And they were closed. So I just went on this search, and I found this little pagan bookstore. I think I was looking for crystals. I was not very far along on my shamanic path at that point, at least where I could name it a shamanic path. I walked in, and a young lady was at the counter, greeted, very nice and friendly. There was someone given a reading, a medium, a clairvoyant, whatever you want to call her. And I saw the sign outside, and I kind of chuckled. And I'm like, no, not going in there for that. And walked past her doing her thing. I nodded out of respect and couldn't find anything there I liked. So I start to walk out. The medium ran after me. She goes, you didn't come here for a reading, did you? And I'm like, no. She goes, but can I tell you what they're saying? And then I'm like, okay, I'm on the spot now. I'm like, yes. And she proceeded to share things with me, not in general human type of things, but some specifics. And I felt the Holy Spirit there. And I'm confused at the same time. And so she said everything she said. She asked me, she goes, do you realize you're a healer? And I'm like, and then she cocks her head and she goes, well, they say you're starting to believe it, but you're not convinced yet. And I'm like, boom. And a few other things just along those lines. And I noticed that the lady was itching something on her arm and found out she had poison ivy. So I'm like, I got something in the car that'll help. I walked I walked out And I stood there and I looked up and I'm like, what do you say? I know everything I was taught and I know everything I did teach. What do you say? And the only answer I got back was, are you listening? And I'm like, okay. And that was a very pivotal point to where I felt more free to explore parts of shamanism that can make some people uncomfortable. But it's all good. You know, I'm sure we're getting close to time, but if I can leave anything with you, you're free. You don't need me to tell you you're free. I'm just stating a fact. You're free. Explore. See what works for you. Follow your heart, because your heart's good. Remember that. Okay? You're not bound by doctrine or creed or anything. Just enjoy this. Play. Have fun. A lot of shamanism is play. And we get to make up things as we go. And I'm seeing a sign. Is that a... You got 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Yes, brother.
So, let me just say 30 seconds. For my students of Bodhi Cristo, you know, which is this, it is the way that I walked. It is what I learned over the 11 years, 10 years of being on silent retreat as a Buddhist who was formulating a more personal understanding of Christianity and of Christ's ways. I encourage all of my students to do exactly as you said. Play. Play with your life. You know, they told us, don't play with your life, you know, as if it was majorly serious. Don't watch TV, you'll go blind. You know, you remember those things?
I do.
Yeah, play with your life. The same way you play with you remember that well, don't you? You know, the same way that you play with your life and you explore your life, explore the thoughts that come into your mind the same way. This is one thing that Buddhism taught me. It is one also thing that Jesus taught me after becoming a Buddhist monk and then leaning more deeply into. Christ was all about, really just being carefree. When he saw trouble, he intervened to fix it so that it could be carefree too. You see, so yeah, play with your life, you know, and just be free. Yeah, and that's particularly for my students. You know, I just wanted to make sure that, and it's also for you as well. Play with, never hold anything to be so solid. They told me that the Pluto was a planet when I was a child. You remember that? It was on the test too, you know. It was.
Yeah.
If I could add one other thing to that, something I teach my students, while you're playing, while you're following all of that, which is beautiful, and I do the same thing, and I love it. In your exploration, in your times and experiences, also don't be afraid of two things. One, to just be. Be who you are, what you are, to the fullest that you are, right now or right in that moment. Because what you have is that moment. 15 seconds from now, we may not have that moment. Someone somewhere will not. So don't be afraid to just be. And also, don't be afraid of what you are when you figure out how to just be who you are. Life is that journey. The growth is that journey. Slide into that destination, having lived it all, played it all, and accepted yourself, your whole self. And forget about what the world would call it. Right. They may call it negative. They may call it positive. Everybody wants a label. Who needs a label? That's right. So play and be.
Yeah, all right. Thank you. That's good stuff.
Everybody, thank you for giving us your time, for being present. Thank you for the love, all the hugs. There are many more to come. I see Jordan. Many more hugs to come. Thank you. Thank you, and just enjoy your life.
Thank you all.